My name is Sharon Renee Juarez. I'm 25 years old. 3 months ago, I sat in a lawyer's office in downtown Denver, 7 months pregnant, while my mother looked directly at me and smiled. Not a warm smile, not a sympathetic smile. The kind of smile that says I've been waiting for this moment for years. Sharon gets nothing, she announced to the room. Absolutely nothing. My father sat beside her, nodding slowly, satisfied. 23 people were in that conference room. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Some I hadn't seen since I was a kid. All of them watching me. All of them waiting to see how I'd react. I placed my hand on my belly, felt my daughter kick, and I said nothing. Because here's the thing about my parents. They'd been planning this moment since before Grandma Helen even got sick. They thought they'd won. They thought the story ended right there. But Grandma Helen? She wasn't finished. When the notary reached for that sealed envelope at the bottom of the stack, the one marked, "To be opened last, private instructions," my mother's smile disappeared. My father went pale. And everything they thought they knew about that inheritance, it crumbled in about 90 seconds. Before I tell you what happened next, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story resonates with you. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. I grew up in a nice house in Lakewood just outside Denver. 4 bedrooms, big backyard. The kind of place where neighbors wave at each other and kids ride bikes until the streetlights come on. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family. My father, Richard Juarez, worked in commercial real estate. Good money, nice suits. The kind of man who shook hands firmly and remembered everyone's name. People respected him, trusted him. My mother, Deborah, was a dental hygienist until I was about 12. Then she stopped working and focused on what she called managing the household, which mostly meant shopping, lunching with friends, and reminding me how much I disappointed her. I was their only child. You'd think that would make me special, protected, loved. You'd be wrong. See, I was never the daughter my mother wanted. She wanted a pageant girl. Someone who cared about makeup and dresses and being popular. Someone she could show off at church functions and neighborhood parties. Instead, she got me. Quiet, bookish. More interested in science than shopping. I wore jeans and hoodies. I'd rather read than go to dances. I got good grades, but that wasn't impressive enough. Anyone can read books, my mother used to say. It takes real talent to be charming. By the time I was 15, I'd learned to make myself invisible at home. I did my homework. I cleaned my room. I stayed out of the way. And I counted the days until I could leave. The one person who saw me, really saw me, was Grandma Helen. She was my father's mother. 72 years old when I was born. Sharp as a tack until the very end. She lived in this beautiful Victorian house in Capitol Hill that had been in the family for 3 generations. Hand-carved banisters, original hardwood floors, a garden out back that she tended herself until she couldn't anymore. Every Sunday, I'd visit her. Just me and her. We'd drink tea and she'd tell me stories about growing up in Colorado, about my grandfather, who died before I was born, about the boarding house her parents ran during the Depression, about surviving and thriving when everyone expected you to fail. Sharon, she'd tell me, you're the only one who visits without wanting something. I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. My parents visited Grandma Helen too, but only on holidays. Only when they needed something. Money for a renovation, a loan for a business opportunity that never panned out. Help with their mortgage that one year my father's investments went sideways. Grandma always helped. She loved my father. He was her only son. But I saw how her eyes dimmed a little each time he asked, how she'd sigh when he left without saying thank you. I went to Colorado State for biology, pre-med track. I wanted to be a pediatrician, Grandma Helen helped with tuition when my parents said they couldn't afford it. They were driving matching BMWs that year, but couldn't afford tuition, right? College was the first time I felt like I could breathe. 4 years of making my own choices, building my own life, making friends who liked me for me, not for what I could do for them. I met Marcus during my junior year. He was studying engineering, calm, steady, kind. The kind of man who listens more than he talks, who remembers the little things, who doesn't need to be the center of attention. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. Small ceremony at the courthouse. My parents didn't come. They said they weren't available. Really. They were just angry I didn't ask for their permission first. Grandma Helen came. She wore her blue dress and her mother's pearls. She cried during the vows. Told me afterward that Marcus reminded her of my grandfather. "He's a good man," she said. "Hold on to him." Marcus and I moved to Aurora. Small apartment, but it was ours. I got a job as a medical assistant while applying to medical schools. Marcus started working for a civil engineering firm. We weren't rich, but we were happy. And then, 18 months ago, I found out I was pregnant. I called Grandma Helen before I called anyone else. She screamed with joy. Actual screaming. This 77-year-old woman screaming into the phone like a teenager. "A great-grandchild," she kept saying. "I'm going to be a great-grandmother." She made me promise to bring the baby to visit every Sunday, just like I used to visit her. She was already planning which room would be the nursery when we came to stay. Talking about teaching my daughter to garden, to bake, to tell stories. I called my parents next. The silence on the other end of the phone was so loud. "Well," my mother finally said, "I suppose congratulations are in order." That was it. No excitement, no joy. Just cold acknowledgement that I had done something that would require her to pretend to be a grandmother someday. 6 months into my pregnancy, Grandma Helen had a stroke. I was at the hospital within an hour. My parents took 3 days to show up. When they finally did, my father went straight to the nurse's station to ask about her affairs, not her condition. Her affairs. Grandma Helen survived the stroke, but she was weak. Couldn't live alone anymore. There was talk of care facilities, of in-home nurses, of selling the house to pay for her care. My father handled all of it. He had power of attorney. He made all the decisions. And every decision somehow seemed to benefit him more than Grandma. I tried to visit as often as I could, but they moved her to a facility 30 miles outside the city. Inconvenient for me, but right by my parents' favorite golf course. 3 weeks before she died, I managed to get out there. Sat with her for 4 hours. She was tired, but her mind was still sharp. "Sharon," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "I need you to know something." "What is it, Grandma?" She looked toward the door, made sure we were alone. "I know what your father's been doing. I've known for a while, but I'm going to make it right. I promise you. When this is all over, you're going to be okay. You and that baby." I didn't know what she meant. I thought maybe she was confused. The medications, the stroke, the stress. "Just trust me," she said. "And whatever happens at the reading, don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. Just wait." 2 weeks later, Grandma Helen passed in her sleep. I need to pause here for a second. Have you ever been made to feel like you don't matter? Like your own family would rather erase you than include you? Drop a comment and share your story, or just type "invisible" if you've been there. And if you're enjoying this, please hit that like button. Now, let me tell you what happened next. The will reading was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon, 2 weeks after the funeral. My father arranged everything. Picked the law firm, set the time, sent out the invitations like it was some kind of party. 23 people in a conference room on the 16th floor of a downtown high-rise, crystal water pitchers on the table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the mountains. Marcus came with me. I was 7 months pregnant and exhausted from grief. He held my hand as we walked in, found seats near the back. My parents were already there, front row, center, like they were at a show. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, was an older gentleman with gray hair and kind eyes. He'd worked with Grandma Helen for over 20 years. He looked uncomfortable. I noticed that, but didn't think much of it. There was also a notary, a woman in her 50s with glasses and a serious expression. She sat slightly apart, holding a folder. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. We're here today to read the last will and testament of Helen Marie Juarez. He started with the small bequests, jewelry to various nieces, a china set to a cousin, some savings bonds to a few family members. Then came the big stuff. To my son, Richard Allen Juarez, I leave the contents of my savings account, totaling $112,000, as well as my investment portfolio valued at approximately $800,000. My father smiled. My mother grabbed his arm. They looked at each other like they'd just won the lottery. Mr. Patterson continued. Additionally, I leave to my son the Victorian residence at 847 Maple Street in Capitol Hill, along with all furniture, artwork, and personal effects contained within. $900,000 in cash and investments, plus a house worth at least $1.2 million. My parents could barely contain themselves. To my daughter-in-law, Deborah Ann Juarez, I leave my collection of designer handbags and accessories. My mother actually clapped. Quietly, but she clapped. And then Mr. Patterson turned a page. His expression shifted, became neutral, deliberately flat. To my granddaughter, Sharon Renee Juarez. The room went quiet. My parents turned to look at me. My mother's eyes were gleaming. I leave my profound love and my hope that she continues to live with the kindness and integrity she has always shown. That was it. No money, no property, just words. My mother stood up, turned to face the room. Sharon gets nothing, she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. Absolutely nothing. 23 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. Guess that's what happens when you're too busy with your own life to take care of family, my father added. He was smiling, actually smiling. My face burned. My eyes stung. Marcus squeezed my hand so hard it almost hurt, but I remembered what Grandma Helen said. Don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. Just wait. So I said nothing. I stared straight ahead. I breathed. Mr. Patterson waited until the murmuring died down. Then he nodded to the notary. There is one final item, he said. Mrs. Juarez left specific instructions that this sealed envelope was to be opened last, and read aloud in the presence of all beneficiaries. The notary stood, walked to the front of the room. She held up a thick manila envelope, sealed with wax, old-fashioned, deliberate. This envelope was deposited with our office 8 months ago, she said, before Mrs. Juarez's stroke, with explicit instructions regarding its handling. My father's smile flickered. What is this? We didn't know about any sealed envelope. Mrs. Juarez was very clear that no one was to know until this moment, the notary replied. She broke the seal. Inside were several documents. The notary examined them for a moment. Her eyebrows rose. "This is a codicil to the original will," she said, "properly witnessed and notarized. It supersedes several provisions of the document we just read." My mother's face went white. "That's not possible. Richard, do something." My father started to stand, but Mr. Patterson held up his hand. "Please, Mr. Juarez, let her finish." The notary began to read. "I, Helen Marie Juarez, being of sound mind, do hereby add the following amendments to my last will and testament. I make these changes in full awareness of my son's actions over the past 3 years, which I have documented extensively." The room was dead silent. "First, I rescind the bequest of the Victorian residence at 847 Maple Street to my son, Richard Allen Juarez. Instead, I leave this property entirely to my granddaughter, Sharon Renee Juarez, to be held in trust until her first child reaches the age of 18, at which point full ownership transfers to Sharon unconditionally." My mother made a sound like she'd been punched. "Second, I establish a trust fund in the amount of $300,000 for the benefit of Sharon's child, to be used for education, health care, and general welfare, administered by Sharon until the child reaches age 25. My father was on his feet now. "This is fraud. This has to be fraud." The notary ignored him and kept reading. "Third, I direct my executor to audit all financial transactions between myself and my son over the past 10 years. I have reason to believe that significant funds were taken from my accounts without proper authorization. Attached to this codicil are recordings and documents supporting this claim." She reached into the envelope and pulled out a USB drive. "What's on that?" my father demanded. "I don't know," the notary said, "but Mrs. Juarez's instructions are clear. This drive is to be given to Sharon along with copies of all documentation." Mr. Patterson spoke up. "Mrs. Juarez also left a letter. For Sharon specifically." He handed me an envelope. My name in Grandma's handwriting. I couldn't open it. Not there. Not in front of them. The notary continued. "Finally, I wish to make clear why I've made these changes. My son has spent the last several years manipulating my finances, isolating me from my granddaughter, and positioning himself to inherit everything I worked my entire life to build. He believes I was too sick to notice. He was wrong." My father was shaking. "This is unacceptable. I'll contest this. Every word of it." Mr. Patterson sighed. "That is your right, Mr. Juarez, but I should warn you. I've reviewed the documentation myself. Your mother was thorough, very thorough. Any legal challenge is unlikely to succeed and would likely expose additional concerns." My mother grabbed my father's arm. Richard, stop." The room erupted into whispers. Aunts and uncles exchanging looks, cousins pulling out their phones. Everyone suddenly realizing that the family golden boy wasn't so golden after all. I sat there with my hand on my belly, still not speaking, still not reacting, but inside, I was saying thank you, over and over. "Thank you, Grandma. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for everything." Marcus drove me home that day. I didn't speak for the first 20 minutes. Just held that envelope with Grandma's letter inside. When we got to our apartment, I finally opened it. "My dearest Sharon," it began, "if you're reading this, then everything went exactly as I planned, and knowing your father, he's probably still standing in that conference room trying to figure out what hit him." I laughed. Through tears, I laughed. The letter was 4 pages long. She explained everything. How she'd noticed discrepancies in her bank statements 2 years ago. how she'd started recording conversations on a small device she kept in her cardigan, how she'd hired a private accountant to track where her money was going. Over 3 years, my father had siphoned nearly $400,000 from her accounts, forged her signature on documents, convinced her doctors to increase her medications so she'd be easier to manage, and she'd documented all of it. "I knew I couldn't stop him while I was alive," she wrote. "He had power of attorney. He controlled everything. So I decided to stop him from the grave instead." The house was worth $1.4 million. The trust fund for my daughter came from money she'd hidden in an account my father didn't know about. And the USB drive contained 17 recorded conversations proving everything. "Use this however you need to," she wrote. "Protect yourself. Protect that baby. And don't ever let them make you feel small again. You were always the only one who loved me just for me. And I want you to know, I saw you. I always saw you. And I am so proud of the woman you've become." I cried for an hour after reading that letter. The next few weeks were chaos. My father hired lawyers, threatened to contest the will, called me every name you can imagine. My mother sent me text messages that would make your hair curl, but the recordings were clear. The documentation was solid. And when my father's lawyers actually heard what was on that USB drive, they strongly advised him to back off. One recording in particular ended the fight. It was from 2 months before Grandma's stroke. My father talking to my mother in Grandma's living room while Grandma pretended to nap in the next room. "Once she's gone," he said on the tape, "we'll have everything. The house, the money, all of it. And Sharon gets nothing. Absolutely nothing. That's what she gets for always being Mommy's favorite." He'd been planning my exclusion for years. He'd manipulated the original will, convinced Grandma to sign documents she didn't fully understand, isolated her from me so I wouldn't ask questions. What he didn't know was that Grandma had been awake, recording every word. My daughter was born 6 weeks later. 8 pounds, 2 ounces, perfect in every way. I named her Helen, and the first place I took her, when she was 2 weeks old, was to that Victorian house in Capitol Hill. Our house now, the house where my grandmother raised my father, the house where she told me stories and taught me about surviving when everyone expects you to fail. I stood in the garden she used to tend, held my daughter against my chest, and I promised her the same thing Grandma promised me. "I see you," I whispered. "I will always see you, and no one will ever make you feel invisible. Not while I'm here." My parents haven't spoken to me since the will reading. They lost not just the house and the money, but their standing in the family. Those aunts and uncles? They'd all borrowed money from Grandma Helen at some point. They all knew my father had been handling her finances. And they all realized, listening to those recordings, that he'd probably been cheating them too. Last I heard, my father is being investigated for elder financial abuse. The statute of limitations hasn't run out on some of those transactions. So while he thought he was inheriting nearly $2 million, he's now looking at potential criminal charges. And my mother? She got those designer handbags. That's all. Just the handbags. So am I the asshole for letting my grandmother's final plan play out? For sitting there in silence while my parents humiliated me, knowing what was coming? For not warning them, not giving them a chance to explain themselves? Maybe. Maybe I should have confronted them years ago. Maybe I should have fought harder when they pushed me away. Maybe I should have exposed my father before Grandma died instead of letting her carry that burden alone. But here's what I know. Grandma Helen was the smartest person I ever met. She knew exactly what she was doing. She gave my father every chance to be decent, and he chose to be cruel instead. She protected me the only way she could. And she made sure that when the truth came out, it came out in front of everyone. I didn't plan any of this. I just trusted her, like she asked me to. And she came through for me, even from beyond the grave. Thank you so much for staying with me through this story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Have you ever had someone believe in you when no one else did? Someone who saw your worth when your own family couldn't? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, check out the video in the description. Until next time, take care of yourself. You're worth it.